I try not to talk to other teachers about it because I don't in any way want to encourage people to leave. I don't want to have that on my conscience, but it's just really sad. I absolutely love my job. This is the best year I've ever had in, my 20th year, and I want to teach at least 10 more years, but I just need to be planning for my future.
Yep. There's at least one other person at my school I know that's moving out of state. And there's, a couple others who are thinking about leaving the profession and or the state. I really don't know what's going to happen in Alaska because, yes, we have an election this year, but as the state has kind of shown, over and over again, people make decisions with their votes. And Alaska, 51% or higher, it ever continues to make these decisions that we just don't see change coming, at least in the current future.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guests are 2024 Alaska Teacher of the Year, Catherine Walker, and 2018 Alaska Teacher of the Year, Ben Walker. Kat teaches high school engineering and marine biology at Dimond High School. Ben teaches 7th grade science at Romig Middle School. Both are in their 20th years teaching with the Anchorage School District, but this year will be their last. Due to the perpetual budget cuts at ASD, Ben and Kat and their 2 high school age children are permanently relocating to Washington State. Kat and Ben Walker, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So Ben, you were on the podcast a while back. We learned your story. I'll refer listeners to go back and listen to that. Kat, I'm so grateful that you're here. You were Teacher of the Year for 2024 for the state of Alaska?
Yes, that's correct.
And then last year, you were one of 4 finalists for National Teacher of the Year?
Yes.
Yeah, so a very impressive resume. Let's learn a little bit about you. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sitka, Alaska, and then my family moved up to Anchorage. So I was an ASD student. We lived in Eagle River, but that's part of the school district. So I graduated from Chugiak High School.
I know that you guys met doing your master's in teaching, but did you go straight to college after graduating? And did you always know you wanted to be a teacher?
No, my mother was a teacher and I did not want to be a teacher. I saw how hard it was and I thought I want to do something else and I wanted to be a doctor. So I went off to Brandeis University and took pre-med classes and really loved them. I did an internship with a surgeon and then I fell in love with teaching during the Peace Corps.
Where were you for the Peace Corps?
I was in Mali, which is in northwestern Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And I got to in a village schoolhouse and then decided to come home and pursue a degree in education at UAA.
Did you go straight for your master's?
Yes.
I know you've been at Dimond High School teaching. Did you teach anywhere prior to Dimond?
Yeah, Ben and I actually were hired at Romig Middle School together. And we taught right next door to each other. It was wonderful. And then after 11 years, due to budget cuts, I was displaced and luckily picked up at Dimond and love high school, love the classes I get to teach. So it worked out well, even though it was pretty traumatic at the time.
Year was that you got pink slipped at Romig?
That was 2017.
He's actually been displaced twice, but one time the money came back. I guess it was after school was already out even, get picked back up with Romig.
Yeah.
And then the next time it was, the money didn't come back. So that was a full displacement.
You both started teaching in 2006?
Yes.
At Romig? And it was after the defined benefit was gone.
We actually were offered our positions during Tier 2 and we accepted our positions. And then right before we started teaching, they switched it to Tier 3. So we're the very first group that has no defined benefit.
Yeah, you don't technically get hired until that first day of school or whatever. So that was after July 1st. So we started the program under Tier 2 and then the law passed and then went into effect July 1st.
So you guys are finishing your 20th years.
Yep.
Yeah,
20 years.
This is it. Year 20.
So it was kind of a happy accident that you ended up at Dimond because that's been a great place for you. But I'm sorry that you've had that whole pink slip experience. Ben, did you ever get a pink slip experience?
No, because technically I was hired like an hour before she was. I signed like earlier the day or something. There's some, it's exactly like when you look it up, our data hires the exact same day, but it came down to like when I actually signed versus when she signed. So
Well, and I'll just say for listeners, if you haven't listened to Ben's podcast, your mother was a teacher at Romig, and are you still in the same classroom that your mom used to teach in?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, I guess if there was ever two teachers, and you were 2018 Alaska Teacher of the Year, right,
Yeah.
Ben?
Yep.
Got it. So two Alaska Teachers of the Year have given 20 years to ASD, and you guys are leaving.
We are. We already put in our letters.
Talk to me about that. Talk about that decision and where you guys are going.
Well, the second part's easy. We're going to Washington, and we're not quite sure where yet, but we're kind of casting a wide net. And right about now is when hiring season kind of starts. So the next month or two will really be telling. As for the first part, there's really not one discrete thing. It's a lot of different factors, but I would say that kind of the through thread or like the umbrella over it all is just a degradation in the quality of life in Alaska. Starting with our profession, obviously we're intricately affected by that, but it's just overall this yearly cycle with everything just being cut down to the bone. And we have people in our state who, they're not getting their SNAP benefits in a timely manner, or can't hire enough corrections people. We can't hire enough troop. Like it's just across the board. And, we just decided that we don't want that for our children. I mean, we're adults, we could tough it out, but our youngest is entering high school. And, even in 4 years, who knows what that looks like, right? So we want her to have a robust high school experience, and my son can finish high school and they're on board. So that's kind of the reason.
Your son is a sophomore?
He's a sophomore, yeah. So he has 2 more years, and I think they both want to go to school outside anyway. So that kind of fits in. And we almost have left a couple of times. And now it just is like, well, if the kids are on board, why wait any longer?
I don't even know how to really phrase this question, but I'll try. I had a podcast recently with the president of the school board and with the superintendent and with a teacher from East High who had been there for over 30 years. And I think the message that I was trying to send from that episode was that the problems in Anchorage School District are not the fault of the school board. They're not the fault of the superintendent. They're the fault of the state. And as a legislator, I would say the fault of a particular gubernatorial administration that has really led the charge on underinvestment in public education in Alaska for now in the 8th year. And it is not the fault of the district itself that $90 million is missing from the budget. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
No, I mean, I think we both agree with you. I'm as teachers, there's certainly things that maybe, the administration, our administration here in ASD could have done differently with spending, but it's certainly not $90 million. And, it's sad. It's sad to see, and the cycle of students, especially testifying for their programs, because really what this has created is, we're in like the educational Hunger Games at this point, where you're pitting one program against another. You're saying we're going to pit, a 12-year-old being able to have an after school sport versus, someone in the hard of hearing getting enough support, or someone in this other program getting enough support. And that's just heartbreaking. And, to have it happen once, right? Because some big thing happened in the state or something is one thing, but to continually have to do it. And kids talk about it, I don't know about people at your school, but, especially, when it's affecting like core services now, they're talking about budget cuts, which I don't remember talking about a budget cut as a public school kid. I mean, I'm sure there was other people doing it, but I was kind of clueless. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything, Kat, but it certainly is a sad thing to watch.
Yeah, I think definitely my students talk about the loss of access to our school psychologist, or schools not having a nurse in the building. They really were shocked about the idea of schools not having a nurse, because every once in a while we really need one. I think it's definitely a matter of life and death, having a trained professional there when you need them. So we're just making impossible choices at this point. We can't lose any.
The pushback, and I'm only going to mention Sitka because that's where you were born and raised, of the early part of your life. But Sitka doesn't have a nurse in every school. It's an unusual and awkward position as an Anchorage legislator to talk about problems in the Anchorage School District when the Anchorage School District, because it's so many tens of thousands of students and there's so many teachers and there's so many schools, there's a lot of opportunities that smaller districts just don't have, like a nurse in every school, a variety of sports. A very small school in a remote part of Alaska is not going to have a tennis program. Like there's just certain things that they're not going to have. So it's a tightrope walk to talk about some of the issues that Anchorage has when people are like, we got rid of our nurses a decade ago. Welcome to our world, Anchorage.
Well, it's kind of like Ben was just talking about how there are impossible decisions at this point where we have groups advocating for their own when everybody's losing out. But we have schools in our state that don't have working bathrooms. And we have schools in our state that don't have roofs that are keeping up with the times, roofs that are leaking. And it really is a statewide issue. And it's something we have to solve on a statewide level.
Well, I think part of it is, that gets at kind of two different philosophies of governing this state, which is the look what that person has and I don't, versus how do we get everybody what they need? Because that small village that doesn't have tennis is going to need something else. And they're going to have to choose to cut that. Maybe it's a cultural program or maybe it's just something fundamental like a roof. But I think that's kind of one of the core arguments happening in Juneau right now is the people that believe if I can't have it, nobody gets it, versus how do we help everybody? And that's actually one of the reasons that we want to maybe try a different environment, because that's an exhausting existence, as you know down there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Tell us about the school that you're going. I mean, do you already have your jobs?
We do not.
Okay.
It's going to be a shift after being so embedded here and being so involved on the school level that we have been and knowing so many families and stuff. But part of it is also just to be parents, and then these last years of high school and events and everything else. And we just kind of want to enjoy that. So we're pretty wide open with where we're going and what we want to do. I mean, we're both qualified 712, so middle or high school somewhere. And then the goal is just to find the best place for our kids to have strong schools. I really don't know what's going to happen because, yes, we have an election this year, but as the state has kind of shown, over and over again, people make decisions with their votes. And Alaska, 51% or higher, or whatever, continues to make these decisions that we just don't see change coming, at least in the current future. And we're not going to wait for another task force report or whatever. So, yeah, but we're excited about it. I mean, I think it's not quite real because the job doesn't exist yet, but we're excited.
You stated that your kids are excited as well, looking forward to the change. What about your more extended family? I assume both of you have extended family in Alaska. What are their thoughts about you guys leaving the state?
So my parents live part-time in Ketchikan, but they have a condo up here as well, so they can spend time with us and time with our children. And they're excited. They're really excited because coming up to Anchorage is hard for them, and it will be easier for them to get down to Washington. So they are in the midst of packing up their condo and getting ready to sell. So that is a bright point in the move. But Ben's mom lives here, and Ben's sister and her family, and they are planning to stay here. So that's something that's really hard, is trying to figure out how to make sure we still spend quality time with them and that we move somewhere where they can get to us really easily.
But no one, family or coworkers or friends or even parents, have questioned why we're leaving. No one has said, oh, what is it? They've all said, I get it. My sister's also in education. She's a counselor and she's tier 2, but she completely understands. And if they didn't have that, she probably, would have to be making other decisions. But, and parents too, like I had a parent the other day said, hey, I heard you're leaving. And I said, yeah, and he said, hey, I just want to thank you for staying long enough for my kids. Like they all get it, especially people with younger families. They all understand that it's just something that, I don't know, it's like a cloud that we just want to kind of get rid of.
Because you're both Alaska Teachers of the Year. You're the very notable teachers that people notice are leaving. But do you know other teachers who are leaving this year as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's gaining momentum. Every year there are more people that are leaving. And when you look at our district and state, everyone who has been teaching 20 years or less can just take it all with them. They can just take it and go. And really, when you have people making the decision, to make sure that they don't outlive their retirement, to make sure that they have retirement all the way through until the end of their life, it's a no-brainer. It's something that we have to do.
Yeah, there's at least one other person at my school I know that's moving out of state. And there's, a couple others who are kind of waiting to see a year or so. And two other science colleagues I know that are thinking about leaving the profession and or the state. And Kat had a colleague she was talking to, and the colleague just kind of said, "Me too. I should look into this." So yeah, I think it's definitely on everybody's mind, and the numbers as well as anybody. That statewide, it's scary, the number of people that leave, and it's scary the number of people that are on emergency hires and J visas and everything. And not that these aren't hardworking, skilled people. It's not a way to sustain a profession. The statistics on people who, do like an emergency cert, how many of them actually end up staying is pretty striking. It's a very low number who actually will make it past 5 years without going through like a normal student teaching internship supported program. And that's really what we're facing. I mean, I don't know if there's a building in our district that doesn't have at least one person like that,
I was lucky enough to have a really incredible student teacher this year through University of Alaska Southeast. And we made it through the first semester, and then he got hired by Stream Academy. They really saw how excellent he was, and they needed a science teacher. And so he is finishing up his master's program while he is teaching full time.
Yeah.
When you get to Washington, teachers get a pension there, I assume?
Yeah, so Washington has a defined benefit. It's based on age and years, so we won't get, we'll get vested and we'll get a pull-up, but there'll be like a reduction of some kind, depending on how many years we go. And then their teachers also pay into Social Security.
How long do you have to work to get vested?
I think it's a 5-year for vesting.
Okay.
It'll be severely.
Definitely do that.
Yeah, we're looking at around 10 or so with kids in college and things like that. It depends on the environment. And, and then both of us have some quarters from before teaching for Social Security. So while there's going to be a big gap, right, getting back into that will also be helpful.
I have a 6th grader in ASD. I guess, do you have any words for families who are staying here, whose kids are in the school district, as it continues to have to make these incredibly difficult decisions to cover these enormous budget gaps?
I mean, I would say stay vocal, and I stay vocal on the statewide level too with deciding who we're sending to Juneau, especially when we have this kind of, the ability to make a change here this year with the governorship. And I know that's exhausting, and I know in everyday life that's really hard to do, but I think that is important. And it seems like, oftentimes the normal person on the street goes unheard, but I think that more people are listening than you think. I don't know.
That's a really good question, and it makes me feel really guilty for leaving, because it is it's scary what's happening with especially middle school. I think middle school losing sports is just so hard for kids, and the lucky can pay for sports and keep their kids involved with athletics, but it's a lot harder for people who struggle with funding. So I guess I always think that we can do special things in public schools. We can make amazing things happen in public schools, and we just need to make sure we support them as much as possible. We don't need private schools, and we don't need special programs. We just need to help support our public schools. But it is a really hard time, I think we're just beginning.
We already have a net out migration, and I was talking to a family who is friends with our children, and they have 3, 2 are the same age, and then one is younger. He's only 3, and they're actually probably, if things don't change, looking to move, between the graduation of the middle one and the younger one entering school. So I feel for these people. I just think that there has to be some kind of paradigm shift in how we think about money in the state. And until that happens, I don't know if we're ever going to get out of this cycle of cuts and band-aids just over and over again.
If we elect a governor who supports increases to school funding, if we maintain or increase majorities in the Senate and the House that support increases to education funding, and are able to return to a defined benefit retirement system, would you guys think about coming back?
That's a really good question. I think we'd have to see it to believe it. I think we've been through so much already that we would need to see the shift. And I think speaking about the funding as an increase really isn't correct terminology. We just really need to try to keep up with inflation. If the funding was keeping up with inflation, I mean, really, that would be flat funding. That's where the $90 million is coming from. We don't need an increase. We just need to keep being able to buy the things we've always been able to buy and pay the people we've always been able to pay. And every year we have less.
Okay. No, that's really a good correction. Thank you for that. Well, thank you both so much for being on the show today. Is there anything I didn't ask about that you wanted me to?
No, I mean, there's a lot still historically with the pension that I think, gets lost. And I think it's important for people to understand where we are now and how different, returning to a defined benefit is this time around versus how it used to be. And a lot of the misinformation out there, especially on the part of some individuals, I think, this is not your grandfather's pension. This is not a Cadillac pension. This has built-in levers to put more risk on the employees if the returns aren't hitting what they need to hit. And the whole idea of everyone's talking about the unfunded liability we have right now. Well, that's what happens when you stop paying into a pension for 20 years. And to use that argument is, kind of disingenuous, because a lot of the unfunded liability is because we haven't been paying into it, not necessarily from the beginning. I mean, we should be having a discussion based on true facts and true numbers. And for some reason, it's become kind of more of a political ploy, an ideological thing than how do we get good public service, workers here. And it's not just teachers, it's firefighters, it's troopers, it's other people in PERS who just run your day-to-day government. And it's been really hard to find people and really hard to keep people when other places are offering, a better overall quality of life, not just a pension. I mean, it's interesting to me because a lot of these politicians and people like to say Alaska's open for business. So are 49 other states.
Right.
And they're taking a lot of our people who have skills and have the things that we need to run our state. And I think that's something that maybe, Alaska hasn't really recognized yet. I think in the past, in the 70s, 80s, maybe Alaska seemed like kind of a mysterious special thing, and it attracted a lot of people. And that's just not the world we live in anymore. You can kayak in a lot of states. You don't have to do it here. So anyway, that's just something I think people need to reckon with, because education gets a lot of the headlines, of course, because it has to do with kids, and the teacher part of the pension gets a lot of headlines. But, it really is a bigger picture quality of life for our state based on who we want to be working in our public services and even filling positions.
So in a way, you guys are also the poster people for the portability of a defined contribution retirement system, because you guys have paid into your defined contribution retirement system for 20 years and are taking all of it with you to Washington, where you can vest into a defined benefit retirement system. And then you still have the benefit of your 20 years in Alaska. So you're going to get their retirement plus your 20 years of savings from Alaska. Like, Alaska's kind of set it up for people like you to go somewhere else and get that sort of double benefit.
Yeah, I do think it's really, really scary. I try not to talk to other teachers about it because I don't in any way want to encourage people to leave. I don't want to have that on my conscience, but it's just really sad. I absolutely love my job. This is the best year I've ever had. In, my 20th year, I am teaching amazing courses to absolutely incredible students. I have these incredible engineering students that are above and beyond anything I could have done at that age. And I get to teach marine biology, and I'm having such a great year, and I want to teach at least 10 more years, but I just need to be planning for my future. So I can't do it. And it's really sad.
Yeah, we have. So the other person leaving from my building, I think he's at 6 years, maybe 7. We had a counselor leave last year, like right after 5, when you're fully vested. So I do think it set it up, and people like to think that's one of the attractions of the plan. But when you're talking about something like public education, it's not like how attractive something like that might be in the private sector when you have, a system that's built on relationships. It's built on getting better every year. It's built on embedding yourself in a community, having siblings over the years, working closely with the same staff year after year. So to set it up to incentivize people to leave it just doesn't make sense.
Pat and Ben Walker, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're
You bet.
welcome.
Anytime.
And we wish you the very best of luck. Obviously, we hate to see you leave, but you've got to do what's best for you and your family. And I'm really grateful for you telling your story today, because I think folks need to hear it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for continuing to fight for public education.
Last week, Ben published an op-ed in the Anchorage Daily News entitled, "We were honored as Alaska Teachers of the Year. Now we can no longer stay." You can find a link to it in the show notes, or take a listen as Ben reads the entire piece right now.
In 2019, after being selected as Alaska's 2018 State Teacher of the Year, I worked with other award-winning educators to pen an op-ed in the Anchorage Daily News entitled, "Why Teach in Alaska?" At the time, we eagerly co-signed as we believed in dedicating a career to Alaskan students and that our legislators and community wanted a thriving public education system. My answer now is a heavy "I can't." My wife, Catherine Walker, the 2024 Alaska Teacher of the Year and one of 4 National Teacher of the Year finalists, and I are leaving. When 2 people, recognized among the most dedicated by the state itself, decide they no longer see a future, the Alaska is a great place to teach narrative hasn't just frayed, it has disintegrated. Leaving Alaska isn't a choice made lightly. It is a heartbreaking conclusion forced by 2 decades of witnessing leadership denigrate and undervalue the profession we love. Let's start at the top. Governor Mike Dunleavy is possibly the most anti-public education governor in the history of Alaska. Over 8 years, he has done little to improve the educational experience of the 95% of young Alaskans coming through public schools every day. He has vetoed nearly every bill aimed at bettering public education, whether it be funding, improving the lives of public school teachers, or even taking care of the one school directly in the state's care. While he pulls a public pension from our state coffers as a public school educator, he has systematically torn down public education through administration hires, funding vetoes, rhetoric, and policy changes, and has been outwardly anti-teacher with the not-so-hidden purpose of funneling public money to inequitable and unaccountable private and religious schools. It doesn't stop there. One lawmaker in particular, Senator Bert Stedman, has done more to fight the sincere efforts of educators and public employees to address the recruitment and retention crisis. He seems to view educators not as the backbone of our future, but as a math problem to be solved with, quote, handsome half-truths and willful ignorance. In a recent press conference, Senator Stedman doubled down on the very rhetoric driving us out. He claimed our current retirement system is, quote, generous, end quote, and ranks 11th in the nation. This is a staggering distortion. Alaska's educators know the truth. Our retirement system gets an F. The reality is that Alaska is the only state in the union that offers its teachers neither a defined benefit pension nor Social Security. This retirement crisis is fueling the fire of our education system's collapse. We have the worst educator turnover in the country, and it is proven that high teacher turnover directly impacts student outcomes. When a student loses a teacher mid-year, or when a school replaces 30% of its staff annually, the continuity of learning is shattered. We are sacrificing our children's futures on the altar of a manufactured crisis of the early 2000s, perpetuated by a Bush administration wanting to privatize Social Security, a last-minute fax to Senate President Ben Stevens, and a multi-billion-dollar error and lawsuit by actuary firm Mercer settled for pennies on the dollar by anti-union Attorney General the other Dan Sullivan. In Alaska, our retirement is not only the worst in the nation for teachers, but it is also the worst in the nation among all professionals. If any of us worked in the private sector with the educational level we have, we would have a 401k with an employer match. This is basically what we have with the state of Alaska, but that is where it stops. In the private sector, we would also be paying into Social Security as well as our employer. This is not even an option for Alaska teachers. So we end up dead last in not only teacher retirement, but retirement in general. It is not just teachers. All public service areas, including state troopers and firefighters, are being decimated and finding it impossible to staff at the levels needed to provide a high quality of life to Alaskans. Alaska is open for business seems to be a favorite refrain of those refusing to fulfill their constitutional duty to fund services while also refusing to get Alaskans fair share from resource extraction. The funny thing is, 49 other states are also open for business, and all 49 arguably have better environments for teachers than Alaska. Alaska is a beautiful state. It was a great place to raise our children outside and to be active. But Alaska needs to realize you can kayak and fish in plenty of other states while also being treated like a professional and earning a secure pension, in addition to having a high quality of life due to funded and respected public sector services and employees. Kat and I didn't want to leave. I've lived in Alaska since I was 2, and Kat was born here. We've raised 2 kids here and have family here. We wanted to stay and help build the world-class education system our leaders love to talk about. But you cannot have a world-class system when your leaders treat people like a disposable commodity or are actively working to destroy it. We are both products of Alaska Public Schools and eagerly enrolled our kids in Anchorage Public School. All we've ever wanted, and all any of the thousands of families we have worked with over the years have ever wanted, is a robust public school experience for our children, like we had growing up. One in which they have teachers who are experienced and feel supported and want to stay their entire career in one community and retire with security. Schools with electives like art and music and extracurriculars like sports, theater, and clubs. Buildings that are safe and well-maintained. At the same time, as community members, Alaskans deserve all public services to be well-funded and maintained, and public sector workers to be compensated and taken care of after a lifetime of service to Alaskans. As adults and parents, we have been front row witnesses to the callous degradation of the quality of life in Alaska, where corporate interests come before our citizens, where we choose companies over sustainability, and out-of-state workers and tourists over our own children. The criminal underfunding of education may be the canary, but unless Alaskans wake up and vote to retake control from corporations and those in power who do their bidding, Alaska, as so many of us have known growing up, will no longer exist. The most maddening part is that there are solutions and other options. This is not the only way. Other resource-heavy states and countries do not have continual deficits and treat public sector workers with dignity and pay and benefits commensurate with their experience. This problem of billions of dollars flowing through our state, but continually having fiscal problems, is a uniquely Alaskan experience. But when this is the case for a large chunk of someone's lifetime, as it has been for Kat and me, you realize it is time for us to change, as it is quite possible the state never will. There really isn't much more to say that thousands of teachers, troopers, firefighters, families, students, business leaders, and concerned community members haven't said year after year after year after year about funding, retirement, rhetoric, and a complete disregard for the valuable contributions of public schools, public school teachers, and all public service employees. So I'll just end with, as Douglas Adams wrote, goodbye, and thanks for all the fish.
You can find a link to Ben Walker's previous appearance on this podcast in the show notes, as well as a link to the recent episode with Anchorage School Board President Carl Jacobs, ASD Superintendent Jarek Bryant, and Betty Davis East High School teacher Janice Strickland. Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@aklike.gov or call my office at 907-465-4940.